So you love podcasts, and you want to listen to more amazing content, but you have no idea what to listen to. And your friends keep telling you about great episodes, yet you can never remember what they told you. Well, here's the answer. Goodpods. It's the social app dedicated to podcasts, where your friends, podcast listeners, and favorite podcast hosts all come together to share on their feeds what they recommend and what they listen to. You can connect to others, bookmark episodes, start a conversation about the episode, connect to the hosts, and most importantly, listen to great podcasts right in the Goodpods app. Download Goodpods wherever you get your apps and start sharing with a community that loves to listen. Goodpods, it's where to connect and listen.
Well, I don't know how to put this, but I'm kind of a big deal. People know me. I'm very important. I have many leather-bound books, and my apartment smells like Thrive Loud with Lou Diamond.
Hello, Thrive Loud listeners. At Thrive Loud, we are always connecting you, the listener, with amazing leaders that are thriving in their lives, their businesses, and their passions. We also have had hundreds of thriving women that have been featured on this podcast. Continuing this important effort, Thrive Loud with Lou Diamond, Success.com, and Clubhouse have joined together to create a special series called Elevating the Brilliant Minds of Women. You'll get a chance to learn about these incredible initiatives of women across the globe, hear about how they are thriving, and how you can connect with them today. Enjoy this amazing conversation, and after the episode, learn more about this powerful initiative.
Get ready to Thrive Loud with Lou Diamond.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Thrive Loud with Lou Diamond, connecting you to the most inspiring and amazing people that are thriving each and every day. I'm your host, Lou Diamond, and today on Thrive Loud, we have a woman whose passion is in the treatment of auditory processing disorder, known as APD. She owns and operates the Auditory Processing Institute, where she trains her peers in the skills needed to provide effective APD diagnostics and therapeutic options. She empowers clients to improve their auditory processing abilities through systemic auditory training, through a series of modules, and I'm going to learn about those today in this little chat. Part of our continuing series of elevating the brilliant minds of women. Thrive Loud listeners, we bring you Angela Alexander. Angela, how are you today?
I'm brilliant. How are you doing today?
Well, now that I know that I have woken you up in the morning hours in Australia, it's a nice starting the day over here. We're ending the day over here. What a great way to bookend 2 days in two different parts of the globe and get to hear and chat about something that is totally unique to something we've never had on Thrive Loud before, but something that, as I've hinted a couple of times in, I am fascinated with. So let's do a little rewind here. Angela, if you could share a little bit of your background and how this became kind of your expertise in your gig, if you would.
Yeah, so some listeners are going to notice that I've got an accent that's quite different from Australia. So I'm originally from Kansas. I've lived in New Zealand the last 9 years, and then I've just moved to Australia just 3 months ago. Wow. Moving during a pandemic, maybe not the smartest thing I've ever done, but really thriving over here.
Well, I just realized that there probably was a limited time that you were even allowed to get in and out of New Zealand, because during the pandemic, New Zealand shut everything down, right?
It's still shut down, actually. So they have their borders closed still. It's very difficult to get in and out. But there was just a really short amount of time where there was a travel bubble between New Zealand and Australia, and we jumped across the ditch during that point.
Okay, so let's talk about this work that you do, and I want to do a little 411, if you would, for our listeners. I don't know if they have that number code in Australia and New Zealand, but we know in the States that means we're getting information. Can you share what auditory processing disorder is? And then I want to dig a little deeper into understanding how you wanted to help people with this.
Absolutely, it's my pleasure. So auditory processing is what your brain does with what your ears hear. So auditory processing disorder is a hearing difficulty that has nothing to do with the ears and everything to do with the brain.
Okay.
So it is amazing. A person can have an absolute normal hearing test. Have you had a hearing test where you hear beeps and push a button or raise a hand? Okay, you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
So that when you get a hearing test done, you're finding out how your hearing sensitivity is, how quietly you can hear things. But we know that speech is far more complex than just a series of beeps. And often a person with an auditory processing disorder will have a normal hearing test result, but they will struggle to hear in background noise. They'll struggle to recognize speech quickly and accurately. They may say huh or what quite often. They may struggle to remember what they've heard, and it's highly prevalent. So we believe that about 5% of the population may have auditory processing difficulties. However, research out of the University of Auckland suggests that up to 35% of Pacific Island children may have auditory processing difficulties. So this is a very common difficulty, and the ways in which it affects life has far-reaching effects. Yeah. If we think about children learn how to read and spell based on language, and you learn language based on what you hear. So we have to keep that whole continuum going in order for a person to get to comprehension, which is true success.
Diving deeper here as to this understanding that in the Pacific Islands, there seems to be a greater instance of APD. Why did they believe that's the case? What do you think that is?
Yeah, there's 5 factors that they're looking into specifically in this research. One of them is maternal health and well-being, environment, diet. The one that I think has the greatest potential is middle ear health. So if you know someone who has had a lot of ear infections growing up, they are essentially hearing underwater. And you know how distorted things can sound underwater. And if the middle ear space is completely full, it only takes a few drops to fill that of water or fluid to fill that middle ear space. And if a person is hearing this and they're learning language while the middle ear space is full of fluid, you can see how the brain doesn't have a really clear idea of what speech is. Middle ear disorders are more prevalent in First Nations people because they have more flat eustachian tubes. That's the tube that runs from your mouth to your ear. Okay. The back of the throat, the nasopharynx for the medical people around. So if that's more flat, more fluid has the potential to get into those spaces.
Fascinating, straight out of the gate here, and I'm totally drawn in on this. I want to also understand what's going on in the brain, or what isn't going on. Is it a matter of the right signals not processing, or they're being distorted, or is it the brain not connecting to the sounds that are coming this way? I guess I'm trying to understand which direction is the issue taking place, or could it be both?
You're asking top down, bottom up. Which way is it? And there's a lot of heterogeneity in auditory processing disorder. So it's this big umbrella term, but the way that one person experiences it might be different from how someone else does. But I'd like to create a little bit of a framework so that you can help build your knowledge. And it's something that we like to call Erber's model. So initially, when I was talking about sensitivity, when you hear the beeps, that is let's kind of picture it like a staircase. And the very bottom step is awareness. Are you aware of sound? If you're not aware of sound, you may have hearing loss. You may have something called auditory neuropathy. We overcome issues of awareness with devices, with hearing aids or a cochlear implant. All right. So once we boost that signal, then we get to go to the next step. And the next step is discrimination. Not only can you hear sound, can you hear the difference between two sounds like and n? You need to have that ability to get to the next step, which is identification. Is M and N is N. It's not just with M and N, of course. And you need all three of these initial steps to get to the final step, which is comprehension. And for me, auditory processing disorder is falling apart at those steps right above awareness.
Okay. So excellent. And thank you for that background. This is fascinating. And I'm so like telling you where I'm leading on this because it's weird where I'm going to go and you're not going to believe it. But let's just take this one step. Help the listeners understand the work you do to help people improve on this specific area where there is difficulty or uncertainty, maybe, if that part. So we understand the type of work that's required to at least maybe heal, amend, fix, maybe repair this issue.
Absolutely. So in basic terms, we call it auditory training. You can think about it as workouts for your ears. Okay. We know that neurons that wire together, fire together. So we're creating neural connections. So I think about it almost like a mountain. And let's say you're a mountain biker and you want to go down the mountain once, right? You're going down a bike on a mountain. And the very first time anybody's mountain bike down the mountain, you might it might be really slow. It might be really awkward. You may fall off. There may be some errors. But each time you go down this mountain, a path becomes more well-worn, faster, more efficient. So what we do with auditory training, one of the parts, we have lots of different parts to the auditory training, but one of the parts is to help people quickly and accurately digest speech sounds. So basically, I want to train a person's brain to be able to categorize each sound really quickly. It's like their reaction time. And right. We can do that with repetitive stimulation.
Okay, so very cool. And this is constant practice, like anything else, like a workout, if you would, to like practice and drill and go through it. Okay.
Yeah, to me, every day is ear day.
Yeah, so let's say you're listening. Now, this is where I'm going. You are listening to, and you are listening to how people are listening in a weird way. And that's actually one of the things I was curious about is how are you measuring it? Because here's the real challenge. You know what something might sound like, and you might send the M sound versus the N for Nancy sound, and now someone needs to process it. But how are you measuring whether they're getting it or not?
Lou, you asked the best questions. So we do evaluate someone prior to treating them, and we use a series of tests. We use a test battery. Now, in the test battery that I use, I'm looking to hear how somebody is hearing in quiet versus how they're hearing in noise in each ear individually. So we do tests where we have background noise in as well. Then we do a test where it's almost like you're listening to a cell phone in one ear and like listening to Clubhouse or like a home phone in the other ear. And we check to see how you're able to integrate between what you hear in the two ears in competing signals. And then the last one is to see how you synthesize sounds, how you bring speech sounds together to figure out what words you're hearing. And there's 926 speech sounds in this battery. So I can go through and analyze and figure out which phonemes or speech sounds are most often in error. I start working with that on therapy, and we make the biggest gains more quickly.
What or who are the people that you're working with? What does this look like? And I want to explain this part. Obviously, we know when people are having trouble hearing that first stage, even the volume and all of that, this is pretty clear forward because they're not hearing. But how they're processing the sounds they hear, that might not necessarily be true. Like someone listening to this podcast might be processing this information differently than another. So how do you identify when is the problem identified is my question. Is it an age thing and a processing and a learning issue, or is it something from a condition or whatnot? I want to know your answer.
Yeah, like I was saying earlier, there's a lot of heterogeneity. So the most common reason why a person is referred to us is because they're having reading problems. Okay. So it'll be it's usually a 7-year-old child. They've done really well in school up until a certain point because they're visually quite strong. They're able to memorize what each word looks like. But when it comes to sounding it out, they have no idea. because they
Right.
cannot associate speech sounds to these written letters. So we call that poor phonemic awareness. But then adults will contact me because they're like, you know what, I've had 3 hearing tests. They've all come back to be within normal limits, but I know I am not hearing.
Yeah.
And for adults, there is no denial. But it's so funny, like the idea of what is the value of a label? Well, without that label, adults especially may call themselves slow, may call themselves dumb, may think that they're just a rude person because they're not interacting as efficiently as they could. So there's a lot of differences.
In that not dissemination, what was the word you used to describe the stage where you're distinguishing? What was the word you used?
Discrimination.
Discrimination. Thank you. I apologize. See, that always had a negative term, discriminating it.
I know.
Differentiating between the two. I got it. That's where
Microsoft Word actually suggested a very inappropriate icon when I was making that chart. I was like, hold on. That's
hey,
not
Microsoft,
right.
stop doing that. But discrimination. What about discriminating? There are different sounds to the parts of the world you were at and where we started this conversation. Obviously, even the way an Aussie speaks, a Kiwi speaks, an Anglo-Brit speaks, an American speaks, or other languages and all of that stuff. How do you formulate that into your math equation here?
Yeah, I mean, a large part of dialect is held in the vowels. So I don't know if a lot of your listeners would realize, but when we make vowel sounds, we keep our mouth open. So
Yes.
Now, I was just living in New Zealand where the vowel sounds are a lot flatter. There's a lot less space in the mouth, and there's a lot less there's less differences between each vowel sound. So for me, it's kind of nice because I have really exaggerated vowel sounds being from the Midwest. So I can say, all right, use this as training wheels, but then we'll go back to your own dialect. And it's also really important whenever you're doing any kind of language-based work that you're not actually trying to be culturally insensitive and pushing your own language on other people. So, but I am a loud American, and this is the Thrive Loud podcast. So, here we go.
Very well said, Angelo. That's spectacular. Let's dive here because I want to make sure I address this, and this has to do with what you see the end product of the work that you do as you're helping these young children really improve or really connect to the sounds so that it processes the sense of that accomplishment through the work that you do to see them improve. First of all, what does that feel like? And secondly, tell me how you're able to measure the results on the output of the work that you do. I guess it has to do with reading comprehension in some form, I would guess.
That is amazing. What a great question. And I think that the work that I do would make brilliant reality TV. I would probably be the only one who watched it, but it is phenomenal.
Brilliant for you.
So what I generally see, because who doesn't love a great before and after? What I see when a child comes in the room for a test is it looks like the world is swirling around them. They have no awareness of what is currently happening. They just look lost. Some of the parents, I'll ask them, how often does your child say, huh, or what? A child last week, the parent said, to every single thing I say. My child never has any idea what I'm saying. And they have a normal hearing test. For adults, they may come into the room and they just feel like something's inherently really wrong with them and they can't put their finger on it, but they know they need help. So then we do 14 sessions of auditory training with them. And then we retest. We retest to see how their auditory skills are. And usually even around session 4 or 5, we will start seeing kind of this confusion melting away, this sudden presence and awareness increasing. My mentor, Jack Katz, talks about the visual angle. He will talk about how people come in and they're just kind of hunched over and they slowly are starting to sit up and interacting more. Now, for outcomes, there is this 25-item questionnaire that I'd be happy to even share with your listeners. It's free. where a person can go on, they can answer 25 questions. And for every answer that they say yes, we get 4 points. For every sometimes 2 points, and every no is 0 points. So this is 25 questions. And if you score 100, then your hearing well-being is really greatly affected. Like 100 is the worst, 0 is the best.
Got it.
And I have this adult woman who was a case study for me last year. Her made-up name is Jackie, and Jackie's pre-test result, her HHIA score, was 82 out of 100. So she has a normal hearing test result, but her score was 82 out of 100. She was being severely impacted in a social, emotional way, or a psychosocial way by her hearing problem. We did the therapy, and at the end of the round of therapy, her score was 30. We did a retest 6 months later, and her score was at 14. So she continued to have improvement post-therapy. And so anything under 15, I wouldn't worry about actually treating. One of the things that I'm saying as a tool is if your listeners are hearing it and they think, hey, this may be an issue of mine, they can check this, and then they can use it to monitor what they're doing to improve their lives. Maybe they just listen to Lou Diamond every day for the rest of their lives, and maybe their score drops just because they are really actively attending. But it's really exciting to watch outcomes like that.
If only that were the case. But anyway, I now want to dive down an angle real quickly before we pull back the curtain and learn more about you, Angela. And this has to do with another program that I host, which is appropriately called Why They Listen. And Why They Listen is actually understanding what is it about certain programming or content that really connects with their audience. And it was brought to my attention by Martin Lindstrom, who's a unbelievable thought leader, lives in Europe. And we had a great conversation. And we talked about there are lots of people, obviously, that listen for great content or great music or great things that connect with us. My question actually has to do with not such as a processing, but it would be interesting, not just on understanding what you're hearing and processing the sounds into words, but for those that are having issues with ADP, I use the acronym correctly. APD, okay. Thank you. ADP is a payment processing company. That's not important right now. For those that are dealing with APD, is there something unique to other things that they hear, like songs or music or podcasts or voices that might sound naturally nice to listen to that might not connect as much? So my question is, forgetting just understanding and transliterating words, what about sounds?
What about sound? So we generally think of, all right, so this depends on if you're right-handed or left-handed. But if you are right-handed, the language processing portion of your brain is largely located in your left temporal lobe. So most people who are right-handed will say that they are also right-eared. They listen to the phone on the right ear, and it's the most highly myelinated pathway from your right ear to that left hemisphere where that language portion is. We would look at music in the in the right hemisphere instead. So tonal processing and looking at the envelope of words is going to be more a right hemisphere job or role. Yeah.
I bring this to your attention because one of the things that we're studying and we're looking into a little deeper into Why They Listen is, why do some people like certain things more than others? Sound of voice, certain songs. You know how there's like 4 common notes that all make all the pop songs. What is it about these combinations and why they listen? It would be interesting to have those that might have APD to really understand if that also is something that isn't processing the same way as others normally do. Be interesting to say. That was my thought.
Yeah, there's a lot of research right now going into what music does to improve the brain and to improve processing. And one of the things that you can do to see if you can drop your HHIA score, that score that I was talking about before, is learn to play a musical instrument.
Oh, wow.
And we just find that musicians have bigger, better brains. Yeah.
And sometimes egos too, but that's not important right now. Okay. Angela Alexander, I want to do a question that I would love. You are helping these incredible people. You've got this unique practice on the other side of the globe that we're now connecting the whole globe to so they can all listen to. And I love asking this question for the guests on this program. And that is, we all have days when we're kicking on all cylinders and everything's processing the way it should be. But then there are days when we're not quite thriving. Angela, on the days that you are off your game and not quite doing the things you'd like to in the way you'd like to do, when you have trouble thriving, what practice do you seek, or what individual do you seek out to get yourself back on the thriving track?
So I'll just say that auditory processing in general is a state dependent kind of situation. So if you're tired, if you're hungry, things like that, you need to take care of your state first. But what I personally do, I have a friend who suggested something called a sensory menu. And what you do is you write down, see, touch, taste, smell, hear. And you write down next to each one of those sensory things something that you love. They can't just be like your okays. They have to be your oh yes. Like I like to drink like right now, chamomile and vanilla tea is my jam for 2021. Love that. What do you like to listen to? Blue Diamond. What do you like to feel? Like I like this dress that I'm wearing. Like that feels really comfortable. What do you like to smell? I like essential oils, not for the woo about it, but for just the smell. Love that. And so what you do is you take your sensory menu of the things that bring you joy and you do as many of them as freaking possible at once and just give yourself a lift, a little bit of a boost.
Okay, that is awesome. That is, we've had hundreds of guests on this program, and I've asked that question to almost all of them. And that is so uniquely specific. And I totally get that. Like, get the things that really get what you like to see, what you like to smell, touch, hear. Very cool. I like it.
I mean, I am pretty sensory dependent. So.
I was going to say it's very on brand at that point. Okay, Angela, let's do the admin part of the show. We're going to put all of this in the show notes, but it always gets more engagement from you. Share with us all the places people can find you, websites, links, social media. Obviously, we met on Clubhouse. So wherever you want them to connect to you, we'll put it in the show notes, but they engage better when they hear it from you.
Absolutely. So apdsupport.com, A as in Apple, P as in Paul, D as in Delta, apdsupport.com. I have an online searchable map. If you feel like this may affect you or someone you love, you can find whoever is closest to you to help you with this difficulty. Feel free to reach out to me too if there's no one in your area. There are currently about 300 million people in the world who may have auditory processing disorder. And I started this online searchable map in 2008, and there were 250 people doing the work. I redid the map in 2018, only 250 people still doing the work. So my goal is to double that number. So I am running online master classes for audiologists and speech language pathologists to upskill themselves to test and treat this difficulty. So if you are an audiologist or SLP, go to auditoryprocessinginstitute.com where you can sign up to take online learning and master classes from me so that we can start helping these people who need us.
I'm going to give a little shout out here on top of this and make sure I connect you. My sister, Audrey Diamond Kent, is an SLP. She's a speech pathologist. So I want to make sure we connect you guys so you guys can chat about all this stuff. I'll make sure she listens to this episode, and now she's going to be like, thanks for giving me the shout out. She also was a guest on this show when we did the sibling episode. So it's fair. We're allowed to give her.
Can I also say,
yes,
come find me on Clubhouse at APD Support.
I like it. That's what we will do. All right. Angela, you ready for Fun Street?
I can't wait for Fun Street.
Okay. Angela, do me a favor. Share with the listeners one of your all-time favorite movies.
I love Office Space.
And why does this movie connect so much with you?
It was the first time in college that I skipped a class to go just watch a movie with friends. So it has that memory associated with it too, but that whole idea of, oh, you missed work today, I wouldn't say I'm missing it. It was just such a cult favorite, and I have watched it 100 million times.
It's underappreciated how good Gary Cole, the actor, is who plays the mean boss in that movie. He's so good. I love him in Dodgeball as the play-by-play announcer, but that role in Office Space is just classic.
Oh.
So, Angela, we're going to do the speed round of Fun Street, and let me explain this to you. I'm going to ask you something that is a question that I want the first thing that comes to your mind. I want things that make you feel good, that lift you up, that motivate you, that make you thrive. Ready? First thing that comes to your mind. A song you love to hear or that pumps you up.
Oh, that Avicii song, Wake Me Up.
Favorite food that's not a dessert.
Dill pickles.
Favorite dessert.
Lemon meringue pie.
An activity you wish you did more of.
Roller skating.
An activity you wish you did less of.
Admin.
If you can snap your fingers and go anywhere in the world, Angela, where are you?
Ooh, French Polynesia.
Angela Alexander, truly kicking it on all cylinders. Follow her on all those channels and leaps where they are. For those who didn't get a chance to see her on the video component of this, a smile from ear to ear. That's just absolutely awesome. And thank you for what you're doing. I think this is super. And by the way, really educational, very valuable to our listeners, but also to so many people that obviously have an issue. And we're going to make sure we inform people about this so they know where to go if they aren't quite processing the way that maybe they should be. Sound good?
Yeah. Can I leave with my why?
You can leave with your why. Go right ahead.
So people mistreat those they think aren't listening. This was something that happened to me, and I believe in being the person you needed when you were younger.
I'm going to mic drop on that moment, Angela. It was awesome to have you on the program. Thanks for coming on.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And to all our listeners out there, thank you for joining us. And until next time, keep thriving onward and upward. And remember, be brief, be bright, be gone.
Thanks for listening to this special episode of Thrive Loud with Lou Diamond, brought to you by Success.com and Thrive Loud. To learn more about this great program and elevating the brilliant minds of women, head on over to thriveloud.com or Success.com. And make sure to follow Lou at Thrive Loud everywhere on social media to learn more about this special series. Thanks for listening.